Lennox Lewis says that he is still the undisputed champion. Well, he's not still the undisputed champion, but you could make an argument that he's still the lineal champion because he retired with that status and nobody has become the undisputed champion since. And it is argued by many, including myself, that in order to establish a new lineage, you first need an undisputed champion. We haven't had that since Lennox Lewis. I know Tyson Fury and his fans, his family, even Frank Warren have launched this campaign to make out as though Tyson Fury is the lineal champion because he beat Vladimir Klitschko, and everybody knows Vladimir Klitschko was the lineal champion. Was he? He was never undisputed. So how is he the lineal champion? Who decides these things? You know, it's up for debate at the end of the day. It's not something that's set in stone. That's my point. But have you noticed since Tyson Fury beat Deontay Wilder to capture the WBC World Heavyweight title and I think the Ring Magazine belt again, he isn't talking about the lineal championship so much. This fictitious made up championship, the lineal champion. He isn't talking about it so much because he doesn't have to. Now he's got an actual belt which comes with certain stipulations. When you are the so-called lineal champion, you don't have any mandatories. So you could fight a bunch of cream puffs and remain lineal champion. Whereas when you are WBC, IBF, WBO, WBA, you have obligations. You're going to be forced, at least periodically, to face a top contender by way of a mandatory. And even when you pick your voluntary defenses, I know there's a lot of shenanigans that goes on, and a fighter who's ranked number 30, as soon as the champion wants to fight him, oh, all of a sudden, magically, he gets a top 10 ranking. There's a lot of that goes on, but there's also many occasions where fighters or champions do pick people out of the top 10 as voluntary defenses. Okay? So at least there's some type of quality control when you have the belt from a major sanctioning body in terms of your opponents. There's some type of quality control. When you are the lineal champion and you don't have any belt, there's no quality control at all, which is why myself and many other people don't really take that lineal thing too seriously. It is not indicative of somebody being the best fighter in their division necessarily. Just as Michael Spinks was lineal champion in the 1980s when Mike Tyson was undisputed, did it mean that Michael Spinks was better than Mike Tyson? Did it mean that the majority of people felt Spinks was the real champion over Tyson? No, it didn't. Same way at light heavyweight several years ago when you had the likes of Andre Ward and Sergey Kovalev fighting each other, but Adonis Stevenson, who had chosen not to take on some of the better competition when he had the opportunity. And look, that's a long story, and there were moments where some of the competition, like Kovalev, could have fought Stevenson and didn't. But either way, Stevenson was fighting lesser competition than Kovalev and Ward. But yet he was a lineal champion. Kovalev and then Ward was regarded as the consensus champion. Most people felt, I mean, there wasn't a complete consensus, but the majority felt that, you know, well, the overwhelming majority, from what I can remember, felt that Andre Ward was the true champion and Adonis Stevenson was a bit of a pretender because he was just holding on to this WBC belt, didn't really want to fight anybody of note, wasn't, you know, willing to prove himself over and over again as the top guy at 175 pounds. So, yeah, what Lennox Lewis is saying here, as far as he's still undisputed, he's not undisputed, obviously. He doesn't have the belts. He's not active. But you could say he's still lineal. If he came back now, who's the lineal champion? If Lennox Lewis comes back now, could you really say it's Tyson Fury? It's Lennox Lewis, isn't it? Because Tyson Fury and his fans are happy to ignore the fact that he was out of the ring for 2.5 years, whatever it was. They believe that the lineage carries over past that gap. Well, what's the time limit on the gap? I mean, we didn't know whether Tyson Fury was ever going to come back. So when is there a cutoff point where you say, okay, no more? It's been too long since this lineal champion fought. he can no longer be classed as a lineal champion. Where's that point? Who decides it? You see? But anyway, the good thing is that Tyson Fury does have a legitimate world championship now. He obviously was stripped to the belts and vacated at least one of the belts following that Klitschko win. Had the hiatus out of the ring, came back. He's been through his trials and tribulations since, but he finally captured that WBC belt from Wilder. Got the Ring Magazine belt as well. So he's got a legitimate claim to be the best heavyweight out there, a legitimate claim to be the real world heavyweight champion, now that he's actually got some hardware. And that comes with, certain stipulations whereby he has to fight a certain quality of opposition. He can't just scrape the barrel for no hopers that just make him look good every time. So anyway, let's find out who the new lineal heavyweight champion is if and when Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua face each other in the ring, assuming Anthony Joshua gets past Kubrat Pulev, and anything can happen in heavyweight boxing, as we know. Assuming he gets past it, let's put Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua in the ring. Then there doesn't need to be any more debate. Doesn't need to be any... See, because John Fury, I saw this program with John Fury and David Hay, and John Fury gets really upset when anybody tries to say that his son is not number one. Well, he's Tyson's dad. He would be biased like that, okay? But it's a little absurd to expect everybody to think like John Fury, to think like a member of Tyson Fury's family. Other people are obviously going to be more objective, and David Hay's one of them. I know John Fury tried to push up on him and accuse him of having a dig, and no, Tyson's number one, clearly. What's the point in Tyson Fury fighting Anthony Joshua if Tyson Fury's number one, clearly? What's the point then? The whole point in having an undisputed fight is so that there can be no more dispute about who the number one is. So I don't like this talk of, oh, Tyson Fury's already proved he's number one. No, I don't like that, because that de-incentivizes that particular undisputed fight. The need, it de-incentivizes the need for that fight. So no, there is no number one right now. People can have their opinions, but people like me want to see the reality in the ring. Whether it's Tyson Fury who comes out on top or Anthony Joshua, may the best man win. That's all I want to see. So anyway, drop your comments in the comment section below. I'm out. If you'd like to access all my boxing content advert-free and enjoy the convenience of listening via a podcast app with the option to download in high-quality MP3, then consider joining me on Patreon. In addition to the aforementioned perks, you'll also gain access to exclusive weekly live stream Q&A sessions and hangouts, as well as uncensored, no-holds-barred uploads which are too blue for YouTube. This includes my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Boxing Extra. There's no contract, there's no commitment, it's only £2.50 a month, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of hardcore boxing enthusiasts by signing up with me here on Patreon today.